Ma'am, for the third time, we do not understand you. The concierge's voice was taut, his eyes flicking toward the growing crowd near the marble front desk of the Liberty Hotel in downtown Boston. The Japanese woman in a navy blue coat stood still as stone. Her hands were folded politely in front of her, but her eyes, sharp, unreadable, swept across the space like a general scanning a battlefield. Behind her, an assistant in a dark suit fumbled with his phone. Two translators whispered helplessly, faces flushed. "Should we call security?" one staff member murmured behind the desk. "She's not being aggressive," another whispered back. "She's just not responding to anything in English, French, or Mandarin. And she's booked in the presidential suite, no less." From the far end of the lobby, near the gleaming brass luggage carts, Noah Whitaker watched silently as he polished the rim of a glass table. His gray janitor's uniform blended into the backdrop like wallpaper. People don't notice janitors. That's part of the job, especially in a place like the Liberty Hotel, where luxury is measured not just in marble, but in who gets to be heard. Madison Crane, the hotel manager, descended the grand staircase like a Broadway actress making her entrance. Her stilettos clicked crisply on the polished floor, her crimson lipstick a punctuation mark of manufactured poise. "Good morning," she said with rehearsed calm, placing both hands on the desk. "I'm the general manager here. How may we assist you?" The Japanese woman didn't respond. Madison repeated herself, firmer this time. Still silence. Madison turned to her staff with a forced smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "She's refusing to speak. This is unacceptable." The murmurs spread like ripples. From where he stood, Noah felt the air shift. This wasn't confusion anymore. It was contempt disguised as courtesy. Fear wearing the mask of professionalism. Madison leaned in toward the guest, her tone condescending, as if addressing a misbehaving child. "This is America, ma'am. If you want service here, you need to speak English." A pause. Then, soft but unmistakable, the woman exhaled. A single, measured breath. Not dramatic. Intentional. And Noah felt a chill slide down his spine. The assistant stepped forward nervously. "She's not being difficult. She simply prefers to communicate in her native language for formal matters." "Formal?" Madison scoffed. "We're not in Tokyo. If she wants towels or champagne, she can point like everyone else. But right now, she's holding up the entire check-in line." Noah placed his cloth back on the janitor's cart and began walking toward the commotion. He didn't know why. He just was. Something in her eyes. He couldn't name it, but he recognized it. It was the look of someone being measured by a currency they never agreed to be traded in. The murmurs began to ripple from the front desk. Guests waiting to check in turned toward each other, shifting uneasily. No one spoke loudly, but the air had thickened with tension, confusion tinged with judgment seeping in through glances and whispers. Madison Crane, the manager of the Liberty Hotel, stood tall, exhaling sharply through her nose. She turned to the nearby security officer. "Escalate this to internal security." Her voice was low, but sharp as glass. The Japanese guest's assistant, a young man named Kenji, rushed forward, positioning himself between the guard and the woman. "Please don't do this. She's not being disruptive. She's one of the most respected business leaders in Japan." Madison frowned. "Then why won't she speak?" Her voice was rising, loud enough to make nearby guests shift back, bracing for escalation. "This is a 5-star hotel, not a language class. We don't have time to guess what someone means through eye contact." The tension had peaked. And then another voice entered the space, not loud, not demanding, but calm, warm, deliberate. "Excuse me." Everyone turned. Madison blinked. Mr. Whitaker, this is a front desk matter, not maintenance. I know, Noah Whitaker replied softly. He walked toward the Japanese woman. His gaze held no pity, only quiet respect. And then he bowed. Slightly, precisely. Not submissive, not performative, just right. Then he spoke. Not in English, not in French, not in Mandarin, but in Japanese. Otsukare-sama desu. Ocha wo ippai ikaga desu ka? Nakamura-sama? That means, thank you for your efforts. Would you care for a cup of tea, Miss Nakamura? The entire lobby fell still. Even the gentle piano music humming from the ceiling speakers seemed to pause. Dr. Hana Nakamura lifted her eyes. They softened, not from surprise, but recognition. The recognition of being seen. She answered in Japanese, her voice fluid and melodic like wind brushing over the strings of a koto. Noah nodded. He gestured toward the lounge near the tall glass windows. We can sit there. No pressure. No need for words. Kenji stammered behind them. He's using Kyoto dialect. Madison gaped. Where did you even learn Japanese? Noah smiled faintly. I think what matters now is that she's finally been heard. Madison opened her mouth to protest, but before she could speak, Hana raised a hand. Calm, steady, like a conductor ending the first movement of a quiet symphony. She turned to Noah and spoke again. Okotoba ni amaete, yoroshiku onegai shimasu, which means, I'll gladly accept your offer. I look forward to your kindness. And just like that, the most powerful woman in the room let go of her suitcase and walked, not with the manager, not with her translator, but beside the janitor, toward the quietest corner of the hotel. No one said a word, but in the silence left behind, a new question began to form. It wasn't, who is she, anymore. It was, who is he? Inside the lounge, warm light spilled across mahogany tables. Gone were the scents of perfume and disinfectant. Here, it smelled like black tea and old books. Hana sat with the kind of practiced grace that only comes from a life of discipline. She didn't look fragile. She looked contained. Noah stood for a moment longer, not out of hesitation, out of awe. There was power in her stillness. She was like a violin string tuned not to snap, but to sing. He left briefly and returned with a small tray of tea. His hands didn't tremble. His movements were careful, reverent almost, as if he'd done this 1,000 times and still remembered to be gentle every time. They sat across from each other. No one spoke, only the sound of tea being poured and the slow release of breath. Then Hana broke the silence. In Tokyo, I speak often, but here, when I speak, people only hear my accent, not my meaning. Noah nodded. Here, people listen for what confirms their assumptions, not for what challenges them. They held each other's gaze. There was no need to explain. I came here to close a deal, Hana said. But maybe I walked into a test. Noah smiled softly. And I think you passed it, without saying a word. Inside the quiet lounge, afternoon light streamed through the glass walls, casting soft glows over the dark walnut table where the two sat. The faint scent of jasmine tea mingled with polished wood and clean linen. Every clink of a spoon, every breath, seemed amplified in contrast to the clamor of the lobby outside. Noah poured the tea with hands both strong and gentle, like someone who had practiced the art 1,000 times. He didn't speak at first. Instead, he watched how Hana lifted her cup, both hands, reverent yet natural, as if she had done it all her life. Perhaps she had. They both took a sip. I used to think that when language becomes a barrier, silence becomes the enemy, Hana said softly, eyes fixed not on Noah, but somewhere beyond his shoulder. But sometimes, in silence, I feel more heard than ever. Noah nodded, rotating his cup gently so the tea left a ring of ripples. I understand, he replied. When my wife passed away, I couldn't speak. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because no words ever felt large enough for that grief. Hannah paused. She turned to look at Noah for the first time since entering the room. When did she pass? 3 years ago. A car accident. She was driving home. We had argued that morning, and that was the last time I ever heard her voice. Noah stopped. No tears, no dramatic pause. Just truth, quiet, raw, and clean, like a blade. I couldn't forgive myself, so I left everything, my job, my friends, even music, and came here. Became invisible in the world I once belonged to. Hannah didn't speak, but she reached up and untied the ribbon in her hair, letting her dark strands fall across her shoulders. A small gesture, but one that seemed like an answer. The first time I came to America, I was 21, she said. I was chosen for an MBA exchange program at Stanford. I thought I was fluent in English, until a professor looked at me like a toddler just because I mispronounced leadership. She laughed gently, but it wasn't a happy sound. In Japan, I was known for speaking fast and decisively. Here, every time I spoke, they told me to slow down, smile more, sound less robotic. I stopped recognizing myself in those requests. Noah leaned forward, his chin resting on one hand. So you chose silence? No, Hannah replied, lips tightening slightly. I chose discernment. I stayed silent when I knew they weren't truly listening. But I kept speaking, to those who listen with their eyes, not just their ears. That sentence hung in the air like a sustained note in a song. Noah smiled faintly. You're not the first I've seen misunderstood here. But you're the first who didn't try to prove anything. You just stood there and let the world reflect on itself. And you? Hannah asked. Why did you learn Japanese? Noah raised his brows slightly, as if dusting off an old memory. I once played shamisen for a teacher from Kyoto. He didn't speak a word of English, but every note he played felt like a conversation with the universe. So, music is a language. And language is rhythm, Noah nodded. You can mess up grammar and still be understood, but mess up the rhythm, and it breaks. Hannah set down her teacup, tilting her head. Do you still play? Noah shook his head, then nodded. Only at night, when no one's around. Then I want to listen, Hannah whispered. That line wasn't just an invitation. It was a key turning in a long locked door. And for Noah, who had lived like a shadow for 3 years, something stirred. All right, he said, but on one condition. Hannah raised an eyebrow. Next time, you teach me how to say leadership with a proper Kyoto accent. Hannah burst out laughing, the first true laugh since her return to America. Light, spontaneous, like she had just taken off a mask she didn't realize she was still wearing. In that moment, neither spoke, but something between them had shifted. They were no longer a misunderstood businesswoman and a janitor who happened to speak Japanese. They were two souls who had once chosen silence, now finding each other through tea, memories, and the rhythm of the unspoken. The story began to spread just hours after that afternoon tea. A hotel guest had casually recorded the moment when Noah stepped out from behind the window he was cleaning and spoke fluent Kyoto-style Japanese. A soft invitation for tea, yet powerful enough to silence the entire lobby of the Liberty Hotel. The video was less than 40 seconds long, but overnight it surpassed 2 million views. The caption was simple, "The Janitor Who Listened," and the hashtag "The Janitor Who Listened" began to spread like wildfire. Every frame was reposted across Reddit, X, Twitter, TikTok, and even LinkedIn, where people normally talk about strategy and KPIs. But this time, they were talking about kindness, about how a window cleaner became the only one sensitive enough to truly listen. Up on the 17th floor of the hotel, Madison Crane was fuming. Who gave him permission to intervene during a VIP check-in? Who allowed a janitor to step between the front desk and the guest? Her voice was sharp as vinegar. In the room, Tara, the head of PR, silently watched the screen replaying the viral clip. She was the first to see the public's response. She had already read comments like, "I used to be a housekeeper in Chicago. People like Noah are the backbone of the hospitality industry. Japanese culture values humility. That CEO will never forget being greeted in her own language." Madison slammed her hand on the table. "Tara, we need to get ahead of the media. Do you understand?" Tara took a pause, then replied slowly, "The thing is, we can't control something that doesn't need PR. This isn't a scandal. It's a real moment. And it touched people. I don't care about feelings. I want control of our image." The next morning, an internal memo was circulated. Temporary suspension of employee Noah Whitaker due to acting beyond his authority during work hours. One sentence, cold and dry. The paper was taped inside the staff locker room. Marcus, the night shift receptionist, was the first to see it. "Unbelievable," he muttered, tearing the notice down and stuffing it in his pocket. "If there's a crime here, it's being too decent." Noah sat alone on the stone bench behind the hotel, where he usually ended his morning shift. He had received the notice but showed no reaction. No anger, no sadness, just that old familiar feeling creeping back. The feeling of being pushed into the background. Hana came to find him. She didn't say much, just sat down beside him and placed a small paper bag in his hands. "Dorayaki," she said. "My mom used to make it for me before every important exam. Today's your test." Noah chuckled softly, the kind of laugh that doesn't need a reason. "I didn't mean to go viral. I just didn't want you to stand there alone." "I know," Hana replied. "Some people do things for the spotlight. Others do it simply because it's the right time." But the internet didn't leave Noah alone. From a short clip, people began digging deeper. A 5-year-old blog post suddenly resurfaced, a touching story by a former high school student about Mr. Noah Whitaker, the only teacher who didn't mock me for playing piano with one hand. Then, a photo from a 2014 recital was unearthed. Noah in a tuxedo, standing under stage lights. Not a janitor, an artist. Each tiny puzzle piece painted a new portrait. Not just the janitor who speaks Japanese, but a man who once had the spotlight and chose to walk away from it. In the conference room, Madison was practically on fire. The Japanese CEO just sent a handwritten thank you letter directly to Noah, Tara reported calmly. So what? He's still janitorial staff. He doesn't represent the brand. "Madison," Tara looked up, locking eyes for the first time. "Maybe that's exactly why people are moved. Not because Noah was assigned, but because he chose." The janitor who listened had now surpassed 10 million mentions. Some guests returned to the hotel just to ask, "Is Noah still here?" Others sent handwritten notes, flowers, even tea. In classrooms, teachers began holding discussions about nonverbal listening. In office buildings, employees started to pay closer attention to the quiet ones, the ones they passed by every day without a hello. Noah still sat alone on that bench, holding Hana's box of dorayaki, the sunlight stitching golden threads across the creases of his uniform. He needed no defense, no title to reclaim. Once he had vanished from the world, and now, with just one sentence, the world remembered he had ever existed. The ground-floor conference room of the Liberty Hotel had never been so crowded. Dozens of reporters, media representatives, and even long-term hotel guests were present, phones in hand, ready to record. Standing at the podium was Hana Nakamura, dressed in a simple gray suit. Her face was bare of makeup, yet her eyes were sharp enough to slice through morning haze. She stood alone. No PR team, no advisors, no pre-printed speech. But it was that very simplicity that held the room in total silence. "Before I say anything, let's watch a short clip," she said in calm, clear English. The screen behind her lit up with security camera footage from the hotel lobby. That day, when Hana stood confused and silent, unable to respond, and Madison Crane turned to a desk clerk and snapped, "She's not responding. Probably can't speak English. Get security. Now." No greeting, no empathy. Just a cold judgment, swift and surgical, like a door slamming shut. The clip froze at the moment Noah Whitaker stepped forward and gently spoke in Japanese. "Otsukare-sama desu. Ocha wo ippai ikaga desu ka, Nakamura-sama?" "Thank you for your hard work. Would you like a cup of tea, Miss Nakamura?" The room remained silent, but the atmosphere had shifted, profoundly. That was the moment I realized, language is not just about vocabulary or grammar, Hana began. It's a choice, whether to listen or to exclude. She gestured toward the back of the room, where Noah was standing quietly behind a door. "That man has no business cards, no title in the corporate hierarchy, but he was the first person who truly listened to me, the first to smile, the first to see me not as a CEO, but as a human being in need." Hana's voice wasn't loud, but it rang like a temple bell in winter air. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the new standard of decency. Not rank, not appearance, not LinkedIn profiles, but the human heart. She pulled a printed statement from her pocket and held it up. "As of today, Liberty Hotel will adopt a new metric in evaluating and training staff, the Empathy Index, and I'm proud to announce that Mr. Noah Whitaker is the first to score a perfect rating." The room erupted. Journalists raised their hands, cameras flickered in every direction. But Noah's eyes stayed on the floor, hands folded, as if afraid that any movement would cause this moment to vanish like morning mist. Madison Crane was absent. Rumors said she'd been asked to submit her resignation. No one discussed it much. No one mourned a figure so accustomed to judging others with a glance. After the press conference, Hana stepped out into the back courtyard, where Noah sat beside an old flower bed, still holding his faded cleaning rag. "I'm sorry for turning this into a spectacle," she said quietly. Noah shook his head with a soft smile. "Number I should be the one thanking you for reminding me who I used to be. You were someone extraordinary, Noah. I never wanted to prove that. I just wanted to do what's right." They sat in silence, not because there was nothing to say, but because nothing more needed to be said. On that bench, in a hotel once obsessed with prestige and protocol, sat two people, one who'd been dismissed as a janitor, and one who'd once been judged by her accent, quietly witnessing an outdated standard crumble. And in its place, something new was being built. Out of simple greetings, out of unjudging eyes, out of words that needed no translation. That afternoon, as sunlight slanted through the tall windows of Liberty Hotel's lounge, Noah Whitaker stood quietly in a corner, polishing glasses. No one had asked him to do it anymore, but the habit, like the comfort of doing something with his hands, remained. At a table by the window, Hana Nakamura sat across from Lily Whitaker, the girl who once barely spoke, now sipping tea like a little adult. No one pushed her. No one asked questions. They just sat there, as if keeping a gentle secret together. Then, what Noah thought would never happen, did. "Your scarf is really pretty," Lily said softly. Her voice was still small, but for the first time in months, it formed a complete sentence. No whispering, no fear. Noah dropped the glass he was holding. Hana looked up. Lily lowered her head slightly, but a tiny smile played on her lips. The scarf Lily referred to was a deep indigo silk scarf, loosely tied around Hana's neck. Embroidered on it were Japanese characters interwoven with English phrases, a quiet harmony of two cultures. It wasn't designer, but it carried a story. "This was a gift from someone who once taught me English." "A long time ago," Hana explained. "She wasn't a formal teacher, just a woman with a gentle heart and eyes that didn't make me feel ashamed when I spoke wrong." Noah stepped closer, his voice trembling slightly. "What was her name, if I may ask?" Hana hesitated. Then, like puzzle pieces slowly falling into place, she looked at the scarf, then at Lily, and the girl's eyes. "Her name was Sophie." The air shifted. That name, the one no one had spoken in this hotel for so long, rang out like a soft bell, stirring old dust inside Noah's heart. "Sophie was my wife." He said it, eyes locked on the scarf. "She passed away 2 years ago. Cancer. And she once told me about a Japanese student she loved dearly, but I never asked the name." Hana was silent. Her voice lowered. "I didn't attend her funeral, even though I knew. I didn't have the courage, but I still remember her smile every time I mispronounced the—" Lily gently tugged at her father's sleeve. "Mom used to speak Japanese to me." Silence. 3 people, connected by one who was gone, stood together in a moment that seemed destined. Hana's scarf had been Sophie's gift. Lily's voice was shaped by lullabies sung in Japanese. And Noah, a man who thought he had lost everything, now found a thread tying him to both past and future. "Maybe she never really left," Noah said softly, smiling at his daughter. "Maybe she's still teaching, through the people she touched." Hana nodded. "Kindness never disappears. It just changes form." That evening, for the first time in years, Lily asked to hear the lullaby her mother used to sing, in Japanese. She sat beside Hana at the old piano in the lounge. Hana played slowly, each note falling like soft raindrops under the warm golden lights. Noah stood behind them, one hand resting on Lily's shoulder. The song rose in 2 voices, Hana's and Lily's, blending into each other as if Sophie were sitting there with them, smiling. No one cried, but every heart in that room fell silent. Not from pain, but because something long lost, something warm, tender, and profoundly human, had just come back to life. A week after the press conference, the lobby of the Liberty Hotel returned to its usual calm. But the atmosphere had changed. Madison Crane officially resigned. Hana was invited to join the Multicultural Advisory Board of the hotel chain. And Noah Whitaker, the man who once walked silently behind a mop, was no longer hiding. He and Lily didn't leave the hotel. Instead, they moved to the penthouse floor, once reserved for VIPs. Hana moved into the room next door. No one explicitly called it a family, but that morning, breakfast included 3 people, 2 cups of tea, 1 glass of milk, and a soft song playing from an old speaker. Lily, her eyes now bright, was no longer the silent little girl. She munched on pancakes while painting, her brush capturing sunlit dots on paper. Hana quietly brewed tea, her robe draped casually over the chair. and Noah, dressed in a simple white shirt, peeled an apple with calm, precise motions. No one was in a rush. No one needed to say anything. That afternoon they walked together through a small park nearby. Lily ran ahead, then picked a tiny daisy and tucked it into Hannah's hair. "She looks like Mom," Lily whispered as she walked back to Noah. Noah nodded. "Not like a replacement, but like a bridge." Hannah overheard that, but didn't turn around. She simply squeezed Lily's hand, now entwined with her own. That night, Lily asked to sleep in Hannah's room. Noah agreed. He stayed alone in the penthouse. The faint smell of old varnish still lingered, but somehow it no longer felt cold. On the desk, he laid out a blank sheet of paper, picked up a pen, and began to write. Not for the media, not as an apology, but for his daughter. A letter, like a quiet whisper. "My dear daughter, by the time you read this, you might not remember how today began, but I hope you'll remember how it felt. That feeling of someone sitting beside you, eating breakfast in silence, and still feeling warm. Some things in life don't need to be said out loud. Like when you know I'm sad, even though I smile. Or when you draw pictures of Mom, though you barely remember her face. I used to think silence was a way to disappear. After your mom passed, I didn't want the world to see my pain. I chose to become a janitor, not because I lacked skills, but because I needed time to learn how to live without her. And then you fell silent, and I realized you were walking the same path I had, but I didn't want you to go it alone. That's when Hannah appeared, not to replace your mom, but to walk beside you, just as I'm learning to walk beside Hannah, without guilt. When you feel small in this big world, remember, kindness doesn't need to be loud. As long as you listen, like the way you listen when Hannah plays piano, I know you'll always find your way back. Because home isn't made of walls and a roof. It's made of someone who listens, even when you say nothing. Dad. The next morning, when Hannah opened her door, she found an envelope placed neatly on a tray. No one was waiting. Just a note on the front. If you've found someone worth trusting, stay. Hannah sat down and read the letter. Her tears didn't fall from pain, but from something she had never dared hope for. A sense of safety. She stepped into the room next door. Lily was still asleep, hugging a pillow. Noah stood by the window, facing away. No words were exchanged. There were no promises, no signatures, just being there for each other. A month later, as autumn brushed gold over the trees outside the hotel, Lily reached for Hannah's hand and said, "I want to call you something. More than just your name." Hannah knelt down and gently touched Lily's hair. "You can call me anything, as long as it comes from your heart." Lily thought for a moment, then whispered, "You're the one who made Mom smile again." Noah stood nearby, not interrupting, only curling his hand slightly, as if holding on to something sacred. The penthouse wasn't a palace, but for three once broken people, it became the place they learned how to love again, quietly, unconditionally. And as Hannah wrote on the little chalkboard next to the tea table, listening. Sometimes that's the deepest form of love. The conference room in Boston wasn't large that morning, but every seat was filled. Women in tailored suits, elegant dresses, and even jeans and sneakers sat quietly as the spotlight lit up the stage. Hannah stepped up to the podium in a cream-white dress, minimalist yet refined. Her hair was neatly pinned back, and on her lapel, a sprig of dried lavender, a gift from Lily. "Good morning," she began, her voice soft but resonant. "I once lived inside a cage called silence." The room went utterly still. not a cough, not a shuffle. I came to America with a tiny suitcase and an even smaller vocabulary. I learned to bow slightly, smile politely, nod frequently, to stay invisible. I thought if I stayed quiet long enough, the world would leave me alone. She paused, scanning the audience. Toward the back sat Elliot, dressed in a simple light blue shirt, his eyes filled with pride. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. He was just there, as he had promised. "I'll stay, if you want me to," Hannah continued. What I didn't realize was that silence could hurt. Not just me, but those who needed a voice, a mirror, a hand to hold. I didn't know some things, if never spoken, would linger as quiet wounds. Her voice wavered for a moment, then found its footing. "I'm not standing here today because I'm the strongest. I'm standing here because I've been afraid. I've been lost. And someone listened." As she stepped down from the stage, applause didn't erupt. It swelled. Slow, rhythmic, lasting. Like each person was saying, "She just spoke for me." Outside in the lobby, Charlotte, the little girl who had once gone a whole year without speaking, now stood proudly by her mother. She walked toward Hannah, holding a small bouquet of lilies. "Miss Hannah," Charlotte said, voice trembling but clear, "I practiced all week to say this." Hannah knelt down, opening her arms. "Thank you for helping me find my voice." No one could hold back tears as the two embraced. One woman who had once been silenced by shame, and a child who had been muted by grief. A month later, Hannah and Lily released their debut children's book, The Girl Who Drew Silence. A story about a girl who didn't speak, but painted her dreams in watercolors. Lily illustrated the book. Hannah wrote the words. It was published in English, Japanese, and Vietnamese. The launch event was intimate, just a few dozen guests, but every face was meaningful. Tara, the fearless PR woman, Mr. Ishikawa, the first hotel guest who ever saw Hannah as more than a maid, and even the elderly doorman who once offered her salt candy while she cried in a restroom years ago. Then, one spring afternoon, in a quiet garden behind the Liberty Hotel, a wedding took place. No extravagance, no fanfare, just simplicity and warmth. Hannah wore a white ao dai. Elliot wore a navy blue suit. Lily walked between them holding a basket of flowers, her lace dress fluttering like a tiny fairy. There was no officiant, no big band, just the wind through cherry blossoms and a soft piano piece Hannah had composed. "We don't promise never to feel lost," they said. "We don't promise we'll always understand each other immediately. But we promise to stay, and to listen, like you listened to me, and like you listened to the world, even when the world overlooked you." As the sun dipped behind the treetops, they released floating lanterns into the dusk. On each lantern, words were scrawled, "Home is someone who listens." Silence has color, shape, and a heartbeat. I found my language, and it didn't have to be words. Elliot held Hannah's hand. Lily sat nestled between them. A family not built by blood, but by attention, healing, and presence. Maybe you've never found the words. Maybe you were once told your voice didn't matter. But if this story speaks to you, even in a whisper, know this: silence doesn't mean absence, and being quiet doesn't mean invisible. Sometimes those who listen the deepest are the ones who carry the loudest truths, and if no one ever told you, you matter. And your voice, however soft, has power. If this story moved you, even just a little, hit that like button to support stories that amplify the quietest voices. And don't forget to subscribe to True Tale Time, where every whisper matters and every silence has a story. Until next time, stay kind, stay listening, and stay human.